My name is Visca. I'm Chief Technology Officer at Elastic Path. It's a company that not a lot of people have heard of, but we've been in business for over 12 years building e-commerce solutions, traditionally more in the enterprise space and service providers like telcos, media companies. Customers like Time Inc. have been a customer for a long time, and even Google uses our platform, Semantic. We have many large organizations that are putting in a platform to enable them to offer their services, their goods, and let people, consumers, come to a storefront and buy those. And in the last several years, we've done a lot of work to focus in on digital services, games, videos, software, those kinds of things that people are buying. So we've evolved. We're still primarily e-commerce, but a lot of the work we're doing with APIs is starting to expand our coverage quite a bit. So I'd say 3 or 4 years ago, we decided that customer experience was a big deal, and how people interact with systems and how they discover products. You know, in this whole digital era and millennials, people don't go to a shopping experience all the time. They won't jump into a website and say, okay, let me see what products you have and put them into a shopping cart. I mean, there's still a lot of that. But really, people are experiencing the web or the internet through different devices, or touch points as we call it. So about 3 or 4 years ago, we decided to kind of, you know, it's kind of a crude analogy. We talk about ripping the head off the stack. We had a full technology stack that really put a storefront up that allowed our customers to build their customer experiences. We decided that customer experiences are expanding dramatically, and companies like Adobe and OpenText and others are doing a much better job at managing the customer experience and the whole marketing side of things. So really targeting the chief marketing officer versus the IT organizations. And by doing that, we've gone, instead of, you know, we hear mobile first, cloud first, we've gone API first. And this is something we did about 4 years ago. And as we ripped the head off the stack, we decided to create a set of APIs and a layer, an intelligent layer, to really enable new touch points and new customer experiences. It's, as always, it's a little bit of both. And you know, we think we see IT organizations transforming into business technology versus, you hear BT quite a lot, and you see the office of the CMO being highly involved, and in a lot of cases, given their OpEx or their operating expense expenditures, actually in some ways being bigger than some of the capital expenditures that you see the IT organization. So it used to be that marketing would say, we need a web storefront, IT group, go and find somebody, put together a solution, and then we'll start using it. That doesn't seem to happen any longer. The CMO wants to own the customer experience, and they have to work in tandem with the IT organization. So we see a real change, a real disruption in how organizations are addressing this need. So probably a good example is a customer like Pearson Education. They decided that the world is moving very quickly, and instead of them as an IT internal technology organization building an e-commerce platform and then the storefronts, they decided to build a platform for what they call the unknown. So they essentially built an enabling platform that uses our API to really enable their lines of business and different organizations as they acquire new companies and subsidiaries, and to go out into that user base and provide them with a set of technologies that really have the right APIs to enable the kind of customer experiences. So one line of business may want to have a textbook, a new textbook of the future, and on an iPad be able to interact with the back-end system. So for us, the API has really changed the way our software is consumed and deployed and implemented, and it's enabling a new ecosystem of innovation. I think that's the key thing, is if you build a platform with the right capabilities and you make it discoverable, you can have application developers be able to understand how to use the system and put it together in new ways. And we really believe by pushing that innovation to the edge, you can bring in a lot of innovation from developers and people that have really great ideas and allow them to build the kind of customer experiences they want. Yeah, I think it's changed it in some ways, because if you focus in on being an enabling layer versus actually trying to build and guess what the customer experience needs to be, it's helped us really focus in on the core capabilities, make it very componentized, allow kind of this registry of services to be discovered again. So for us, it's allowed us to be very focused in on the core services and how we layer those together and how we provide those to our customers, which are typically IT organizations that are implementing this. sometimes on-premise, sometimes in the cloud, and sometimes in a hybrid environment. So for us, we looked at this and we developed APIs using every technology, web services, poor old XML, JSON, in Java, SOAP, and we always, everyone talks about give SOAP a rest, kind of a joke. We jumped on the REST bandwagon early on, but then when we looked at REST, we liked the idea of having an API that was focused more on providing the nouns or the verbs of the business. So in our case, in commerce, it's about product, it's about cart, it's about these kinds of nouns. So an application developer shouldn't have to know all the complexities of the backend system. They should just be able to refer to these kinds of resources. So we decided to look deeper into REST, and there's a model out there called the Richardson Maturity Model, and he's defined different levels of REST. And so we very quickly jumped on the more advanced form of REST, which is referred to as level 3, and we've added above that, and it's a hypermedia control. So to your question about what's a good API, we believe the API has to be very intelligent. We believe there has to be a facade across the complexity of the back-end systems, and that facade needs to put together the result set that can be returned to the application developer that's kind of pre-packaged, that doesn't require the application developer to have to dig through hundreds of pages of documentation. So for us, it's about being discoverable, navigable, to understand how to use the services, and to provide real simplicity. And we think that's going to foster an explosion of applications against the API. From an API standpoint, it's not just about put an API on your system. I mean, everyone has APIs of some form. It's building the right kind of API, and it's using management facilities like Apogee. And we've done work with Apogee. We really love the platform. We also see some good innovation in some of the other providers like Mashery and Layer 7 and SOA Software. And so from our standpoint, we believe you have to build the right kind of API. So we're out there evangelizing a lot of this idea of a level 3 REST, a hypermedia controlled API. And we think that makes it easier for the consumability of the API. So from our standpoint, it's not enough to have 300 APIs, it's about having the right 10 or 20 or 30 APIs that enable that kind of application. Yeah, so I was a CTO of business objects, so I came from a BI space, and we sold into SAP and drove a lot of the BI world. So I've come to this commerce world with a very strong BI focus. So a lot of what we're doing in our API is about capturing data, and it's about taking data and transforming it into information, into knowledge, into insights. And it's trying to operationalize that data. And again, data is fairly raw, it's about the insights that you gather from it. So one thing we recommend to all of our customers and evangelize is when you produce an API, make sure you have a concept of being able to capture that data. And so within our API, we have a concept of a data tap. So as an API is being used, we're collecting a lot of information about this. And not just for when the consumer buys the product. We think every touch point, every interaction is gold. And I think if you know how to mine that, you can really get value. And you can operationalize it so the system learns. The system understands and tries to predict intent, tries to understand what the consumer is trying to do. So we believe usage behavior is huge. So analytics tends to be kind of a rear view mirror look at what actually happened. And we think it has to go beyond that. We think it has to be insightful, it has to be predictive and operationalized. Ironically, when I was at IBM for 12 years, and by the way, I knew Anant from back my IBM days, so it's interesting to kind of come back into this world. I was building e-commerce solutions with IBM, and ironically, 12, 13 years later, it hasn't really changed that much. People still put up a storefront, they offer product, and they put it into a shopping cart. Finally, I think APIs have now enabled us to go into the next generation of commerce. And you hear about omni-channel commerce, and it's really about all the multiple touch points. And it's not just about that web storefront, which is still very important, but it's about, when I'm watching a video and I see a watch on the TV and I think, wow, that's really a cool watch, I'd love to get more information. So maybe from my second screen, it's able to keep track of what's being viewed, and I can very quickly see the products as they come through, and maybe I can put it into my wish list. So from us, commerce is evolving, and that is becoming immersive. It comes into the context of life. I don't go into a shopping mode and say, I'm going to go look for this. As I consume content and services, as I'm reading books, as I'm watching videos, as I'm listening to songs. I mean, how often do you watch a video and the soundtrack, you go, wow, this is a great soundtrack. I'd buy the soundtrack in a second. So if you can do that within the experience, when someone is actually at that point of consuming, I think think the whole monetization side, and it sounds like you're exploiting the consumer, but you're not really. You're helping them find what they want, what they need at the time they're experiencing it. So we think that e-commerce is finally coming of age in a new world, omni-channel, multi-channel, single channel, whatever you want to call it. There are new touch points. You look at the machine-to-machine devices. My car should be able to download maps and buy them if they need to. So we think it's going to go beyond just the consumer. It's also going to be business partners. It's going to be machines, the Internet of Things, the Internet of Everything. So I think there's a confluence of dynamics in the marketplace, and I think APIs have come at the right time. And I think it's going to be an exciting next 5 years or so. We are passionate about this, and we're ecstatic that the rest of the world, in some ways, has really caught on this. Seeing conferences like this, and I think Apogee's done a great job at this conference, and there's a real buzz about it. And I think finally we're making it mainstream. So we're really happy to be part of that.